Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, Capital One Bank, Eastern Consolidated, M&T Bank, Sterling National Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Customers Bank, Aerial Property Advisors, Perfect Building Maintenance. Additional funding has been provided by AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, AVR Realty Company, Avison Young, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Mortgage Lending, Citizens Bank, Cohen Equities, Colliers International NYC, Collins Building Services, Connect One Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Genova Burns, Handro Properties, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investments, Hodges Ward Elliott Inc., Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Madison Realty Capital, Mattone Group, Mercantile Bank, New Banks, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Polsonelli, Rosewood Realty Services, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Knackle Group at Cushman & Wakefield, Maring Goff Family Foundation, the Moynihan Group, and these friends.
So real estate has changed. The world has changed over the past half a century. So today I've assembled this group of real estate developers and a banker to talk about what's happening. You know, the term recourse, assisted living, sizes of apartments, industrial buildings converted to offices. Who knows? No more garage, parking, gas stations. So the group includes the eminent Joesph Mattone, chairman and CEO of the Mattone Group, Allan V. Rose, the most established and experienced of our group, who's the chairman and CEO of the...
Trying to say I'm the oldest.
Okay, I didn't say that, okay. AVR Realty Group. Vinny Riso, who is the chairman and CEO of the Briarwood organization. And last but not least, the man who, if he doesn't give away the money, they can't build. Joe Ficalora, who is the president and CEO of New York Community Bancorp. So, as I was saying prior to the show, the world has changed a lot in the 71 years that you've been in business. Mr. Rose?
Well, I think the whole answer is pretty simple. Take 1965, where I built my first hotel in Westchester. Why did I build a Howard Johnson? Because Howard Johnson was the only company on the whole highway. There was no Marriott, there was no Hilton, there was no McDonald's, there was nothing. So they had their choice of locations, choice of builders, so we were that. Nassau County was just becoming a viable entity.
The home of NYCB Live.
Right. The Long Island Expressway hadn't been built. It was just starting to come out of Queens and into Long Island. So Valley Stream was the beginning of Long Island. Then we went to Baldwin. Then we kept following the LI East, and every builder kept building along the way. There was no apartment houses. There was maybe 6 shopping centers in the entire Long Island. Forget about assisted living. Nobody even had heard about it. So one of my answers is pretty simple. We needed everything. We needed hotels. We needed apartments.
You needed supermarkets.
We needed supermarkets. We needed everything you can think of. We needed doctors. We needed hospitals. Today, I'm skipping back. I can't think of anything we really need. There's enough apartments, there's enough shopping centers, there's too many hotels, there's too much of everything. And the only reason things get built is you got egomaniac builders like us who think we can do it a little better, right? A little smarter. And but you're pushing everything. There is you can't look at an open field and say, wow, they need something.
Okay.
We don't need anything.
Today, you're still building. Okay, you're building a
I'm
major.
still building.
You just finished an apartment complex in Yaphank.
Right.
You're building a huge retail complex over there. Part of it is also an assisted living that you're not moving into, but it's over there, and you're involved. Here's the question. When Joe Ficalora started a Queens County Savings Bank 52 years ago, there was not something called CMBS. Okay, when a banker would meet with somebody, okay, there was a deal. They would know things. I mean, how do you see this interpersonal relationship which has changed when the bankers relating to developers today?
Well, it depends on the developer. It depends on the product.
Right, but in general, how do you see the?
Well, in broad terms, it is more efficient, more effective from the standpoint of communicating all the things that are essential to effectuate a deal. But negotiation is still negotiation, and that takes time because people want to position themselves
But what
differently.
about competition?
Just makes it easier for there to be non-bank competition.
Okay, so there's more competition for you than you had years ago. When you did your first one of your projects, okay, you didn't have all these insurance companies. You didn't have something called CMBS. You didn't have alternative lenders. You didn't have private.
Well, you had community banks, really, that you went to. In downtown Brooklyn, for instance, you had your various community
Please,
banks.
they had community
Well,
banks in
well,
Queens. Don't,
yeah.
no,
don't hurt
my
his
office.
baby. Since 1852, you don't want him to.
Queens was a foreign land. I was a Brooklyn-based lawyer.
Okay.
And my office was in Brooklyn. And in those days, we had the Greenpoint Savings Bank, for instance, which was an available bank for loans and things of that nature. So you went to where you were known. I think that's one of the factors that Joe emphasized. When we got big, we went to then Kings County Savings Bank, and then the Lafayette Savings Bank, and finally Republic Savings Bank.
I didn't hear the commercial banks. You never went to the chemical banks or the.
Well,
Not in those days.
Hanover?
In those days,
I think he's right.
in
you went to the bank.
in those days, if
knew
you were a
or
home
were
builder,
known. Yeah.
you went to the Dime Savings Bank, the Williamsburg Savings Bank. You had all of these savings banks that weren't really owned by anybody.
Let's ask the home builder of New York City. When your father started the business in 1905, okay, going back, when you joined the business with your brother, who'd you bank with, and what type of work were you building?
Most of the banks were savings banks. We did most of our financing with Long Island Savings Bank and continued with other savings banks along the way. We did utilize some commercial banks. EAB was one of them. But most of them were community-type banks.
But when you went into affordable, okay, you were one of the first guys in affordable housing.
Yes.
Okay, how hard was it to become an affordable housing? Today in New York City, even in Long Island, there's an affordable housing component. But the city has, today you have to have an affordable, and then there's always the affordable housing being built.
Well, the affordable housing, when it was first started, was a lot different than it is today. We've built over, I'm guessing, about 3,500 residential units over the years. But basically, affordable housing was easier back then simply because the city owned so much land and contributed that land to that development, which was which lowered the costs of everything and the ability of people to qualify for the loans.
You've been in the business over 50 years, over close to 60 years. How hard is it to be in business today? Was it easier when you were starting 58 years ago, or is it easy? Do you see it today? There's more competition.
there are various factors that affected my personal career. I see it as more competitive because I see outside money from foreign countries coming in to be competitive in the buying of real estate. They come to park their money here because they feel it's much safer here. I think there were various eras of that money coming in from various countries who had a surplus of dollars. For instance, there was the Japanese era where they bought up Rockefeller Center and things of that nature. I see the EB-5 programs. They buy properties that I would never be able to reach in terms of dollars and think there was an economic return that would be a valid deal. I can't see paying the kind of pricing that they are able to afford and then see a bottom line. So if you're asking
what we're saying
me,
in many cases is the foreign money coming into the world, the combination of both foreign investors and the immigration program, which is giving money over here, has definitely changed the world. How do you look at, when you, as a bank today, when somebody says, I have traditional lending up to a point, and then I have EB-5 money? I mean, this was never an idea. I mean, it's mezzanine. I mean,
Still not a good idea.
I'm not disagreeing. Years ago, you never looked, you wouldn't do a deal with mezzanine debt.
No. We always negotiate our deal direct, and we're the final financial sources. What happens after we close the deal sometimes differs, but we have rules in place that establish the guidelines that must be followed once they've established the loan with us. But we don't get involved with others in doing deals.
But over the past 52 years, how has banking changed with, you know, with the mega banks, with the different changes, with the CMBS lending, with the EB-5 that Allan brought up? How much more competition is it to be in? Is it tougher to be in the financing of doing financing for any of these individuals and other people today?
There's no question that the regulatory changes are the most prominent reasons why banking is different today than it might have been 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. The existence of other lenders has taken a greater share of the market because they don't have the same regulatory constraints as banks. So there are more lenders in the market today that in some cases provide options, better choices than banks can provide.
And I'm just going to go back 25 or 30 years ago when savings and loans institutions, if you remember, they were partners with builders, right?
Yes.
right?
Oh, sure.
So that was a different
There were
world.
joint ventures. I had a lot of those things.
We did a number of joint ventures
Right,
with savings
right,
banks.
Yeah.
And how did it work out?
Worked out well.
Very favorable in my case.
Yes.
I don't know others, but I...
How did it work out for the banks?
Very well. The relationship between everybody here and savings banks is in fact the way it was done.
That's how you started. You worked
Yeah,
for a savings bank,
right.
and if they liked you, they could finance as many houses
No,
as you could,
but
as you could possibly
But wait,
build.
weren't savings banks joint venture partners in many
Not
cases?
always.
In
Not
certain
always.
cases,
In
they
certain
were also-
cases.
Sometimes.
Not always.
I don't know.
Right.
Saving, you're talking about the S&Ls were,
Right,
but not
no,
banks
not
like the
savings
Dime
banks.
or the big
I'm
banks.
talking about the savings and loan institutions were very active. I mean, that took them out because at times there was, as one would say, there was no skin in the game. The people really didn't have much. You know, they went over to the bank.
They also all got wiped out because of that.
That's
activity.
exactly. That's why
You
I
know, when
bring
the
it up.
RTC came along and
Right,
all
they
these
all went
banks,
out.
they examined these banks. They had nothing, but had a lot of paper that they couldn't sell.
Right.
And they all sold properties at that. We bought so much property from the RTC in those days for nothing, because they didn't know how to handle the properties.
You know, let's look at retail. You alluded to the situation that years ago you needed apartments, you needed retail, you
Right.
needed industrial. Today you look at the situation. I mean, you have heavy retail. You know, over there you have some retail over there, and you have some retail in your portfolio over there. The e-commerce is definitely having an effect on retail. There is no question. And even the large bricks and mortar people, for example, Walmart bought Jet, which is an e-commerce company. You know, Cabal is being bought by Best and all the rest. How do you see retail today?
Retail today, it depends on where you are. If you have a little strip supermarket and some stores, and you're not trying to compete with the discounters of the world, you're going to do fine. Or if we have a nice shopping center up in Portchester where the location is so good, you know, at the intersection of 287, Route 1, and the New England Thruway, that's going to survive anything. You also have uses today that we never had years ago. Who ever heard of an Office Max store, you know, or in some cases we have urgent care stuff in shopping centers. You have hospitals in shopping centers today. So along with the e-commerce competition, which is really difficult, things are coming to take the place.
There are people taking different things. You know, we were talking about, you know, today physical therapy centers, like that people are coming to you, renting spaces. You know, at one time, all of this was self-contained in a hospital, so it's a different world. Now, you had a large portfolio of gas stations. I mean, we look in
we are still sought after with our locations. I mean, we get a constant inquiry of anybody whose leases are up. There are still forces out there that want good locations. It's still a location.
No question, but the gas stations are no longer being there. I mean, they're being replaced by
Well, if there are more lucrative dollars to be made by utilization,
lucrative dollars.
You know what I'm saying? If you can develop a location for more dollars, yes, like I sold the piece in Brooklyn, you know, to a storage company, okay? I could never realize the dollars that would get as a station.
If we look back many years ago, were there storage companies? They weren't storage warehouses 40, 50 years ago.
They're all over the place now.
Basements.
So it was more of an attraction in terms of profitability for me to sell the piece, Joe, than to rent it as a continual station. So that's what we did.
When you have the deans of real estate, what are the opportunities today in the 21st century for a developer and a banker? Vinny?
I think there's always opportunities, but today, especially in the city of New York, the building housing has a lot of problems connected with it. The loss of 421A was the result of a big expansion in the number of units being built in 2016. And in 2017,
which is what we were talking about before. Look at the number of units coming on in downtown Brooklyn and in Long Island City. I mean, out of nowhere, you have 25,000 in total apartments, which is a question of being absorbed.
Well, it was overbuilt simply to make sure that the properties retained the 421
So what happens
benefits.
Now that 421As under the affordable are back?
We shall see. It looks, you know, a lot of people,
marketing problem.
It'll all work itself out. You'll have a few tough
are
years
very concerned about it.
Everything comes around.
But that's true. Everything does come around. But it'll take a little time.
Where do you see the opportunities for banks today, and where do you see opportunities for people? I mean, you're a major lender to the real estate community. Where do you see the good opportunities?
I think there's no question. What was and what is and what will be is very fundamentally the same. There are people that have the ability to create value.
No, but I'm talking in different type of things. When we brought up Allan, I brought up the subject of assisted living. 50 years ago, we didn't have assisted living. That's what Allan was saying. They weren't assisted living. 50 years ago, they weren't urgent care centers. Where do you see the difference of the opportunities, maybe, and what type of?
But I think what you're touching upon there is there are lenders who will be very comfortable doing lending on that type product. Right. That is not our product, but there are plenty of alternative lenders, and certainly that product has a future. The evolution of how people choose to live and where they choose to live is something that we're all constantly being reminded of. That's right.
A nice apartment house where you can have a meal sent up or something. Yep. You know, you touched on how banking has changed. I don't think banking has changed whatsoever. The best bankers, and I've dealt with many, many bankers, are the guys who understand their customers.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember Charlie Adgermain? He was one of the guys from the Chase. I used to hand him documents, papers. He says, I don't look at the papers. He says, I look in your eyes, and I can tell whether you're going to pay that loan.
You know, Larry Silverstein tells the story of his first building It was a loft building that he bought. His father says we could have flipped it, and he found this guy, Phil Green, on Delancey Street at Public National Bank. And he said, kid, I'm going to give you the money. And it worked out. So it was a question of the kid and the money over there. Where do you see the opportunities today?
Well,
I mean, you have a Home Depot, you have other things, you have a big Fairway store. You
Well,
know.
there's also the issue. There's two things I want to say. I have a very similar story to that with John Palmer, who was the head of Republic Bank before it became HSBC. He says, Joe, I don't lend the money so much on the paper. I lend the money on you.
Right.
That's exactly what he said.
And that clearly
I think that's the way it was done.
Sure,
That's the way it was done.
And when they deviated from that, I remember I was dealing with the chemical bank, and we used to produce AAA shopping centers, you know, very, very good collateral. And they came to me one day and said, we're not going to do business with individual builders anymore. We're only going to do wholesale deals, 500 million.
Right, and then also
billion.
with REITs.
And who are they lending money at to? Some swindlers that had never done deals in their whole life, Wall Street promoters.
Yeah.
And they got killed doing that. They really got hurt pretty badly doing that. And one day he came back to me, he said, you know, Allan, I was wrong. He said, I'd love to go back to lending you money on AAA shopping centers. I said, forget about it.
So here's
There's one thing we're doing now, which is the concept of recycling some of our own properties without disclosing location. We are now have a shopping facility that we are converting not only into a larger shopping facility, we are building another potential 600,000 feet on it, okay? Because it's an excellent location for public transportation. It's a potential hospital type of utilization site. What I'm trying to say is, as Joe said, there's lots of opportunities
You're
out there.
repositioning assets.
That's
okay,
it.
I think that's the question.
Because we control it,
Okay,
Joe. We
that's
don't
right.
have to pay $60 million for a piece of real
Right.
estate that just say,
You know,
what a starting price.
Allan was talking that 25 years ago, he started a development in Yaphank, which it finally came to fruition 25 years later. So, you know, the world changes on that. But where are the opportunities for you, Vinny? Where do you see the opportunities today? You brought up the idea that churches and synagogues have properties that could be utilized for joint ventures.
Tell him the one you were looking at, the guy wanted $60 million. He comes to me with, he said, Joe, you want to buy?
You know, there's no question that churches and synagogues are land rich and dollar poor. We have had so many opportunities to look at, some of which were outrageous, and we simply walked away from them. On the other hand, right now, I think we have 5 churches that we're working with, basically utilizing their property to build, expand, or give the church new quarters to some degree, and then expand it to uses of residential and retail to bring in income for the churches.
So they're taking value. They're,
Yes.
as we were saying, repositioning.
One thing you started to talk about, and one of the few things that's worthwhile being old for, I can't think of many,
Not old.
is that we've all paid off a lot of mortgages,
Yeah.
and we own a lot of land without any leverage. And I'd say more than anything we're doing right now, on our own properties, we're ripping down buildings, making them nicer, bigger,
But you know-
better. But I don't know how young people today can
Oh,
get
yeah.
into this business.
It's
The
difficult.
insurance. Remember insurance on a house used to cost you $100 a house for the insurance. Now insurance on one stinking house is $1,000.
But look at the office buildings. Okay, you built Metrotech with Bruce. Okay, and other things. You built and you owned office buildings. Today, the people are using smaller space. They're doing hoteling. They're looking at different ideas. I mean, the biggest leaser of space 2 years ago was WeWork. They leased 27 million square feet of space. Okay, the co-working, you know, it's a nice idea, but who knows what happens in the future. Crowdfunding is a big topic. I said, crowdfunding, that's what we called years ago a syndication. Call it a different way, okay? Forget the net.
I think one of the problems that a lot of developers, I'm not criticizing, who got in trouble were guys who overextended themselves with mortgages. And when it come to pay back, they had problems. The one rule I always made was don't over leverage. I mean that very sincerely. I have, by the grace of God, never defaulted in any situation with a repayment, okay? That's what I ever tell all the bankers. If you lend me money, I pay you back.
And I think, I don't want to speak for Mr. Ficalora, sometimes you have to give back property. It happens
Well,
in
it
a
happens,
circumstance, but it's the question of the way you deal with the bank, right, Joe?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. If you lend right, you never lose because the property covers what you lend.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what circumstances may arise during the course of the period that you're together. If the property was properly valued at the time you did the deal.
In 1990, I lied to God. I said, God, get me out of this. I'll never sign my name again. I lied. The next good dealer came along, boy, we signed in a minute.
Well, the good news is that there are lenders who've lent money through the decades which have had many, many serious challenges. Right. There are people that have developed through the decades and have done extraordinarily well. The people who do best are the people who buy low and sell high. They buy in the depths of a cycle. And certainly you're better suited to.
So I'm going to ask a quick question because we have like a minute left. Is it a time to buy today or is it a time to sell today? Mr. Rose?
I don't think it's a time to buy, that's for sure. And I don't think it's a time to sell either because the values are not there anymore. You know, when we used to buy multifamily jobs, we had 20,000 apartments at one point. You bought for 5%, you could mortgage it for 3.5% to 4%, and you had a leverage. Now, what happens with owners, even though the interest rates have gone up, in their mind, the value of the property hasn't gone down. So everybody's at an impasse today. You can't buy, you can't sell. I think the best thing to do today is just sit it out, be very conservative like all these guys.
I agree. It's a waiting position today.
Yeah.
Joesph?
If there is a decent tenant with a lease and there is a bottom line with a decent credit, I do with the deal.
And in finale, my comment is, if we don't have 1031s, what happens to our world?
It gets very bad.
Yeah.
Very
Especially if it happens abruptly.
Right.
It causes market dislocation.
Okay, so I'd like to thank my deans of development and banking for being today. My friend Joe, Allan, Vinny, and Joe, and I'll see you next week.